Minh, now 27, was small in stature, his skin tanned from months spent roaming his family's coffee fields. He was born and raised in a highland commune of Gia Lai province, where mornings were blanketed in mist rolling down the hills, and nights carried the chirping of insects mingled with the scent of wild sunflowers seeping into every corner of the house. Minh was gentle by nature, quiet, and had the habit of doing everything with care. He would never promise anything unless he was certain he could follow through. That morning, as the sun had just peaked over the mountain ridge, Minh was bent over tying up several fertilizer sacks on the porch when his mother called from the kitchen. She set a teapot on the table, pouring tea while eyeing her son with a thoughtful gaze. She lifted her cup slowly, her voice unhurried. "Have you heard about Mr. Sao's family down by the stream, Minh?" Minh looked up, his hands still gripping the rope tightly. He replied in a low tone, "I heard some women at the market say he's been sick for months. But it seems the doctors can't find the cause." She set the cup down, worry flickering in her eyes. "People say he's been cursed with black magic." Minh furrowed his brow, suppressing a sigh. "These kinds of things, I think we should listen but not believe too much. Mom, around here, rumors spread easily. You can never be sure what's true." She lowered her gaze, her finger tracing the rim of the cup. "I know, but they say last night someone heard crying outside their yard. He was lying unconscious, his hands gripping tightly like he was holding onto something. His family was terrified." Minh walked over to the table, sitting down across from her, lowering his voice, his eyes fixed on hers. He asked, "Do you really believe Gaia exists?" His mother met his gaze, her voice soft. "In our region, Gaia is nothing unusual. Good people use it to heal or keep love. Bad people use it to harm others." Her words left Minh silent for a long moment. Since childhood, he'd heard countless stories about Gaia, but he had never seen it firsthand nor believed with certainty. Still, the thought of a healthy man suddenly wasting away filled him with unease. That afternoon, Minh rode down to the district town with a load of coffee. The red dirt road stretched between hills heavy with ripe coffee cherries, the highland breeze carrying the earthy scent of ripe fruit and damp soil. Near the bend by the stream, he spotted a strange woman sitting by the roadside. A dark shawl covered most of her face, leaving only a pair of deep eyes with a piercing gaze. The woman tilted her head slightly as Minh slowed his bike. Her voice was hoarse and low, like wind through a rocky crevice. "You're Mrs. Ho's son, aren't you?" Minh startled, his foot holding the brake. "Yes, who are you? And how do you know me?" She adjusted her shawl without taking her eyes off him. "In this village, who doesn't know you and your mother? But you should be careful. Something is about to happen in your home." Minh frowned, leaning his head to get a better look. "What do you mean?" She cast her gaze toward the distant hills. "Something is coming. Not everyone can see it." Before Minh could ask more, she rose and walked quickly into a narrow path leading up the mountain, her figure vanishing behind the trees. Minh stood still for a few seconds, a mix of curiosity and unease stirring inside him. That night, as Minh sat on the porch mending a rat trap, his father entered through the gate, carrying a bundle of firewood. Setting it down, he wiped his sweat and said, "This afternoon, I heard that Mr. Sao's family invited a master from Kon Tum. They say he's very skilled at breaking Gaia." Minh looked up, his hands pausing. "Do you believe in that kind of thing, Dad?" His father gazed into the darkness beyond the yard, his voice calm but firm. "Believe it or not, that's up to each person. But in these mountains, Gaia is no joke." The sound of dogs barking at the gate broke their conversation. A gust of wind swept through, bringing the faint scent of wild sunflowers, and beneath it, Minh caught a strange, earthy odor he couldn't place. He sat motionless, eyes fixed on the darkness before the house. The night felt thick and heavy, and somewhere amid the steady chirp of insects, he thought he heard the faint sound of footsteps on the ground. The highland wind that night was colder than usual, whistling through the creaking eaves and making the oil lamp hanging in front of the house sway gently. Minh sat still, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the gate. The footsteps he had heard seemed both near and far, steady for a while, then gone completely. His father set the bundle of firewood in the corner of the porch and quietly pulled up a chair beside his son. Stroking his thin beard, he spoke softly. "Go inside and sleep early. Son, it's too cold to stay out here for long." Minh didn't take his eyes off the darkness. His voice low and deliberate. "Dad, did you hear anything?" His father tilted his head, glanced toward the yard, then shook his head. "Just the wind and a few crickets." Minh nodded slightly, though the uneasy feeling lingered in his chest. He stood, gathering his tools and heading inside. As he shut the door, he glanced quickly toward the gate. It was still closed, but something about it left him unsettled. The next morning, as Minh stepped into the coffee garden, the family's black dog suddenly barked furiously toward the bamboo fence at the far end. Minh hurried over and saw, at the base of a coffee tree, a small dark brown cloth pouch tied tightly with a red string. It was damp, giving off a pungent, earthy odor that was sharp enough to sting his nose. He bent down, reaching for it, when his mother's voice rang out behind him, filled with alarm. "Minh, don't touch it." He froze, looking back at her. She rushed over, her eyes clouded with worry. "Leave it as it is. This isn't something ordinary." Minh exhaled, stepping back half a pace. "You think it's Guy?" She bit her lip, glancing around before lowering her voice. "I'm not sure, but it's best to call your father and either bury it deep or burn it." Hearing her call, his father came out with a hoe on his shoulder. He frowned at the pouch but said nothing, simply crouching down to dig a deep hole beneath the mango tree at the far end of the garden. The pouch was placed inside, the soil covered, and he pressed the earth down firmly with the shovel, as if trying to drive away something unseen. Minh followed his parents back into the house, his heart heavy. Over lunch, his father spoke between bites. "This afternoon, go down to the district town and buy more incense sticks and coarse salt. Tonight, I want to burn incense around the garden, just in case someone's trying to harm us." Minh nodded, but the image of the strange woman by the roadside the day before returned vividly, her hoarse voice, her deep, penetrating eyes, and her warning about something that's coming, felt more like a prophecy now. By late afternoon, Minh was riding home with a small bag of salt and a bundle of incense. Near the same bend as before, he slowed, glancing toward the roadside. There was no sign of the woman, only the last streaks of sunlight stretching across the grass. When he got home, he helped his father place incense sticks around the garden. The scent of the smoldering incense spread, blending with the damp smell of the soil after the afternoon rain. As he laid the final handful of salt in a corner of the yard, Minh shivered. Through the haze of incense smoke, he caught a glimpse of a dark figure leaning against a coffee tree. Completely still, he spun around, but there was nothing, only smoke and the shifting shadows of leaves. That evening, the family sat together in the living room. The radio played an agricultural news program, mixed with the hum of crickets outside. His mother, knitting, asked, "Are you planning to visit Mr. Sao? They say the Guy master arrived this morning." Minh thought for a moment before answering. "I think I should go. Maybe I can learn how to protect ourselves." His father nodded, his eyes pensive. "If you go, do it tomorrow morning, while it's still early. I heard Mr. Sao is very weak today." Minh leaned back in his chair, listening to the wind whistle through the cracks in the door. Strangely, that same earthy, pungent scent from earlier wafted in again, stronger this time, as if someone were standing right outside on the porch. Slowly, he rose to his feet and opened the door. The front yard lay bathed in silver moonlight, the narrow path glimmering faintly, and the wild sunflowers swayed gently in the wind. But deep down, Minh knew something was still out there, watching him, patient and silent. The next morning, with mist still covering the rolling hills, Minh wheeled his motorbike out to the gate. His mother handed him a small bag of pastries and reminded him, "When you get there, greet them properly. They're in a difficult situation right now, so don't disturb them too much." Minh nodded, giving her a faint smile to ease her worry before starting the engine and heading toward the streamside hamlet. The dirt road was slick after the night's rain, causing the tires to slide slightly. But Minh had been used to this feeling since childhood. The early morning breeze carried the scent of coffee leaves and damp earth, mingled with the crowing of roosters and the distant lowing of buffalo. As he approached Mr. So's house, Minh saw a small group gathered at the gate, whispering among themselves. He parked his bike by the fence and walked over. Mrs. Tu, the neighbor, recognized him, nodded, and spoke quietly. "The guy master just arrived earlier this morning. They say he came from Kon Tum and is very skilled." Minh looked into the yard. Mr. So's house had a weathered tin roof and a wide, shadowy porch. In the center of the living room, a man in his early 50s sat cross-legged on a woven mat. He wore a brown long tunic, his hair neatly tied in a bun, his face thin but bright, with deep eyes that seemed to pierce through everyone. Beside him stood a small wooden table holding several glass jars filled with cloudy liquid and a few tightly tied cloth bundles secured with red string. Mr. So lay on the bed, his face gaunt, lips dry and cracked. The sound of his shallow breathing filled the still room. The guy master looked up as he noticed Minh standing at the doorway. His voice was deep and firm. "Are you a family member?" Minh shook his head slightly and stepped inside. "No, sir, I'm from the upper hamlet. I just heard the news and came to visit." The master gave a small nod, his eyes never leaving Minh. "Good, the more witnesses here, the better, but you must not touch anything I take out of the patient." Minh nodded, swallowing quietly. The atmosphere in the room felt heavy, as if each breath came slower. The master took out a bundle of green leaves from his bag, rinsed them in a bowl of cloudy water, then placed them on Mr. So's chest. His lips murmured strange, incomprehensible words in a steady, low tone. A few minutes later, Minh saw Mr. So's fingers twitch, his lips moving as if trying to speak, but no sound came out. The master suddenly gestured for everyone to step back. He opened a small cloth pouch, poured out a few glossy black seeds, and dropped them into a bowl of water. The water immediately turned a dark brown. That same pungent, earthy odor spread through the room, making Minh shiver. Mr. So let out a faint moan, his entire body trembling. From the corner of his mouth, a thin brown strand wriggled out, moving like a living worm. Murmurs rose in the room. A few people covered their mouths to stifle a gasp. The master calmly picked up a glass jar, plucked the thing out with tongs, and dropped it inside. Once the lid was sealed tight, he said, "This is blood-feeding guy. It's slipped into food or drink, then slowly drains the victim's life force until they waste away." Minh swallowed hard, his hands clenching at his sides. How could someone do something like this? The master looked straight at him, unblinking. The human heart can be more terrifying than demons. Remember this, in this region, there aren't many who know how to raise Guy. But once they do, it's very hard for them to stop. Mr. So's breathing gradually steadied. Though he remained weak, the master packed up his tools, stood, and addressed the room. "The guy has been removed, but he must be monitored closely. Whoever planted it will know once it's destroyed, and they may try something else." As people began to disperse, Minh lingered, stepping closer. He asked softly, "Master, yesterday I met a strange woman by the roadside. She told me something bad was coming to my family. Could it be?" The master tilted his head slightly, as if reading Minh's thoughts. "Tell me everything." Minh recounted the story from the beginning. When he finished, the master was silent for a moment, then said, "Her words could have been a warning or a threat. Don't rush to believe, but don't ignore it either. If someone truly intends to harm your family, then finding that cloth pouch in your garden yesterday was no coincidence." Outside, the morning sun had climbed high, filtering through the coffee trees. But to Minh, its warmth couldn't chase away the cold sensation gripping the back of his neck. Minh sat frozen, his ears catching the sound of heavy footsteps pressing down on the damp brick floor. The dim oil lamp cast flickering light on the wall, his trembling shadow melting into the patches of darkness as if being swallowed whole. He turned toward the old woman sitting in the corner by the kitchen, his voice trembling as though he had just swallowed a breath of cold air. "Grandma, is there someone else in the house?" The old woman didn't look at Minh. Her thin, bony hand stirred the pot of boiling soup with slow, deliberate motions. Her voice was hoarse, sounding as though it came from somewhere far away. "This, you should see for yourself." Minh swallowed hard, the musty smell mingling with the smoky scent from the stove weighing heavily in his lungs. The footsteps continued, but this time he realized they weren't from just one person. There was also a faint scraping sound, like someone dragging something heavy across the floor. He forced himself to ask again, his voice dry and brittle. "Grandma, tell me the truth, in this house, has there ever been?" Suddenly, the old woman set the ladle down with a sharp clang against the pot, the metallic sound ringing out before fading into silence. She turned toward him, her cloudy eyes locked on Minh, but her gaze cut straight through him. "You're not at home right now." The words sent a chill racing down Minh's spine. His eyes darted around, and in that instant, everything seemed to change. The walls were cracked, peeling plaster revealing old bricks beneath. The windows, once shut tight, now stood slightly ajar, letting in a draft carrying a pungent, metallic stench. From the narrow opening of the door, a blackened, sinewy hand slowly slid inside, creeping along the floor like a snake. Minh stumbled backward, knocking over a wooden chair with a loud crash. He screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the howling wind and the faint, chilling laughter coming from somewhere behind him. The old woman was still sitting there, but her lips hadn't moved at all. That night, a sudden downpour crashed down like a flood, each heavy drop pounding against the tin roof, creating a steady yet unnerving rhythm. Nam sat huddled by the kitchen fire, his back pressed to the wall, eyes fixed on the crackling flames. Aunt Tu added more firewood, speaking softly. "You see, when it rains like this, the yin energy is heavy. People say, something starts walking the roads." Nam shivered, his voice trembling as he asked, What kind of thing?" Aunt Tu tilted her head, her cloudy eyes glinting with a mysterious light. "We call them drifting spirits. They die in the river, their bodies never rising to the surface, their souls wandering endlessly in the rain. Tonight, there'll probably be many of them out." A long howl of wind slipped through the cracks in the door, making Nam swallow hard. He suddenly felt as though someone outside was standing there, watching him. Moments later, Aunt Tu stood up and reached for the oil lamp. "Stay here, I'm going to check on the ducks in the back. Don't go anywhere." Minh nodded, but less than a minute later, a faint voice called right outside the window. Minh, he froze. That voice was so familiar, exactly like Tai, his childhood friend from the hamlet, except Tai had drowned when his boat capsized just 2 weeks ago. Forcing himself to push down the rising fear, Minh stepped over and pulled aside the bamboo curtain. Outside, under a flash of lightning, he saw a pale, deathly face, hair dripping wet and plastered to the skin, smiling at him. The next bolt of lightning split the sky, and when Minh blinked again, the window was empty. Only the pounding rain remained, along with the overwhelming stench of muddy river water seeping in. He stumbled back, barely gathering his thoughts when Aunt Tu's voice called from the kitchen. "Minh, open the door? I'm back." A chill prickled across his skin, because just moments ago, Aunt Tu had said she was going out back, and behind the house was only the path along the riverbank, the very place Tai had died. Minh stood silently on the porch, his eyes vacant, staring at the red dirt road now darkened under the dimming twilight. In the distance, a dog barked, its voice mixing with the wind whispering through the bamboo, sounding like faint, incomprehensible murmurs. Mrs. Sao stepped out from the kitchen, holding a steaming cup of tea. She called gently, her tone tinged with concern. "Minh, have a sip of tea. Son, don't stand there too long, you'll catch a chill." Minh turned slightly toward her, forcing a smile, but his face still showed unease. "Mom, I've been hearing someone calling from the road, and it sounds just like Tin's voice." Mrs. Sao's eyes widened for a split second before she quickly composed herself. "Tin? There's no such thing. Don't say things like that. No need to stir up chills by speaking his name." Minh slowly set the teacup down on the step, his voice lowering. but I heard it clearly. His voice, exactly like when we were kids. And he'd call me out to the canal to play. Mrs. Sao gripped the towel in her hand tighter, her gaze fixed on the darkness ahead. Minh, remember what I've told you. Since the day he died in that incident, if anyone hears their name called at night, they must never answer and never go outside. Lock the doors early tonight, and don't let curiosity get the better of you. Suddenly, the wind rose stronger, flipping the broad banana leaves in the garden with a loud rustling. In its howl, Minh thought he could hear the faint sound of footsteps splashing through water. Swallowing hard, he stepped inside and slammed the door shut, but his eyes still, almost involuntarily, flicked toward the darkness outside, where the shadows of the bamboo swayed and bent in the wind. Minh stood in front of Mrs. Nam's yard, his heart weighed down as if a heavy stone were pressing on it. His voice trembled, both from the cold and from what he had just heard. Mrs. Nam poured a cup of tea, speaking slowly. That shadow, it's not something new. Back when your father was still alive, it was already lingering around here. People in the village have seen it many times, but few dared to speak of it. Minh frowned and asked, "But why is it following me? I haven't done anything related to it." Mrs. Nam shook her head, her aged eyes seeming to pierce into the past. "There are debts that must be paid, whether you want to or not. If not in this life, then in the next. You're simply the one carrying it forward." A cold gust swept through the porch, making the bamboo leaves at the gate rustle against each other. Minh clenched his fists, forcing his voice to stay steady. "Can you tell me more? I want to know who it is." Mrs. Nam was silent for a long while before letting out a sigh. She was a young woman who died at the river dock behind the village. Wrongfully, her blood turned that stretch of water red. Since then, people have heard crying there every night. Your father was the last person to see her. Minh's heart tightened. He vaguely remembered the forbidden stories the adults never allowed him to hear when he was a child. But he had never imagined the truth was this close to him. He forced himself to ask, "Then, what should I do now?" Mrs. Nam looked deep into Minh's eyes, speaking slowly. "If you want peace, you must return her to where she truly belongs. But, do you have the courage? Once you start, there will be no turning back." Minh clenched his hands until they felt ice cold along his spine. He knew there was no other choice. "I do. Please, tell me what to do." Mrs. Nam stood, went into her room, and returned with an old silk scarf stained a faded yellow. A dried, dark red blotch marked it. Looking like old blood, she handed it to Minh, her tone grave. "Keep this. Tomorrow night, go to the river dock. All you have to do is call her name, and she will come. But be careful, don't let her touch you." Minh gripped the scarf tightly, a chill seeping into every crease of his hand. He knew tomorrow night would change everything. But now, the only path left was forward. Minh stood still in the yard, the night wind cutting through his hair and chilling the back of his neck. The faint yellow porch light stretched the shadows of the surrounding trees into long, twisted shapes, like reaching arms. He swallowed hard and turned to go inside, but the sound of footsteps rustling behind him made him stop. He spun around sharply, narrowing his eyes toward the dirt road. His voice trembled. Who's out there?" A slender figure appeared at the edge of the light. It was Mrs. Tu, the neighbor. She held a basket, walking closer, her eyes showing a trace of concern. Lowering her voice, she said, "I saw you standing out here for a while, so I came to check. But, have you noticed anything strange?" "Minh?" Minh took a deep breath, steadying himself before replying. "I've been hearing footsteps, but when I turn around, there's no one there." Mrs. Tu was silent for a few seconds, worry flickering in her eyes. Then she asked softly, "Did you go by the pond this afternoon?" Minh frowned. "I did." "Why?" She glanced around nervously, as if afraid someone might overhear, then whispered, "A few days ago, they pulled a red cloth out of that pond. People say it was a charm, but no one knows who put it there. And that pond, it's not a clean place. You shouldn't go near it." A cold shiver ran down Min's spine. He was about to ask more, but Mrs. Tu quickly turned away, muttering something under her breath as she walked off. He hurried into the house and shut the door. Inside, the warm light eased the lingering chill. But the image of that red cloth kept flashing in his mind, bright against the black water of the pond. That night, as Minh was about to sleep, a soft knocking came at the door. He sat up with a start, his heartbeat pounding. When he opened it, a strange young woman stood before him, her hair dripping wet, her face deathly pale. She spoke softly, her voice like a passing breeze. "Give it back to me?" That night, Minh lay on his rickety bamboo bed, his eyes fixed on the darkness outside the window. The night wind drifted in from the riverbank, carrying the rustling of nipa palm leaves and a biting damp chill. He shifted slightly, trying to find a more comfortable position, but the image of the shadow standing silently at the end of the alley that afternoon clung stubbornly to his mind. From the other bed, his mother's voice came softly, as if trying to hide her worry. "Minh, are you asleep yet?" He answered quietly, his eyes still locked on the pitch-black window frame. "Not yet, Mom. I feel a little strange." She turned over, the mat creaking in the stillness. "Don't think too much. In our village, strange things happen from time to time, but it's best to just ignore them." Minh swallowed hard and turned toward the wall, but then rolled back when he heard soft footsteps outside in the yard. He held his breath, straining to listen. The steps were uneven, dragging, slow yet heavy. "Mom, did you hear that?" he asked, his voice trembling. There was a pause before she replied. "I didn't hear anything. You must be imagining it." Suddenly, the footsteps stopped right at the door. The old wooden panels quivered slightly, the pitch-black gap between them pulling Minh's gaze in. He swallowed, his heart pounding. He started to sit up, but his mother's hand pressed on his shoulder, holding him down. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't look outside, no matter what you hear. Don't look." Confused, Minh started to ask, but she only shook her head, her eyes fixed on the dark void ahead. A cold draft slipped in, carrying a pungent, metallic scent, like old blood. Minh shivered and clutched the blanket tighter. The footsteps started again, this time moving away, fading into the sound of river water lapping at the bank. Only when they had vanished completely did his mother sigh and pull the blanket over herself. "Mom, has something happened here before?" Minh asked, his voice still shaky. She didn't answer right away. Turning toward the wall, she spoke softly, as if afraid someone might overhear. "I'll tell you tomorrow. For now, sleep." But Minh knew for certain he wouldn't be able to close his eyes that night. Minh walked slowly along the narrow dirt road, shaded on both sides by rows of coconut palms, their leaves brushing together with whispers that seemed almost like faint voices. The late afternoon wind carried moisture from the far-off fields, along with the earthy scent of mud. He stopped in front of Mrs. Tsao's gate, intending to ask more about her daughter. But before he could knock, the sound of her voice from inside made him pause. She was speaking to someone in a hoarse tone, leaning closer to the window. She said, "I told you, don't go near that place again. It doesn't want strangers disturbing its rest." A man's voice answered, low and edged with irritation. "But this isn't over. I need to know who was the one that—" Mrs. Tsao cut him off sharply. "If you bring it up again, you won't be the only one who suffers." Minh quietly stepped back, his heart thudding. He turned away, trying to push the words from his mind. But the image of the abandoned house by the bamboo grove kept flashing in his head, the one villagers claimed no one had dared live in for decades. Night fell faster than Minh expected. By the time he returned to the boarding house, Mr. Tu, the landlord, was sitting on the porch, holding a cup of tea and staring into the distance. Seeing Minh, he spoke slowly, as if weighing each word. "You've been to that place, haven't you, Minh?" Minh froze. How do you know?" Mr. Tu sighed. "Around here, everyone knows. The curious always end up there. But not all of them come back the same." Minh swallowed hard, asking directly, "What's in that place that everyone avoids?" Mr. Tu looked at him for a long moment, then began. "Over 20 years ago, a family lived there. One stormy night, they all vanished. By morning, the only thing people found were muddy footprints leading to the back garden, and then stopping at the riverbank. No one ever saw them again. Minh stayed silent, each word weighing heavier in his mind. He was about to ask more when the wind suddenly picked up, banging open the back door of the boarding house, its hinges groaning in the darkness. Mr. Tu turned toward the sound, frowning slightly. "Did you lock the back door?" "I did, but," Minh started. Before he could finish, from the shadowed yard behind the house, a slender figure stepped into view, swaying unsteadily, her long hair dripping wet, as if she had just walked out of the rain. Minh stood frozen in the middle of the abandoned house, his breathing heavy as if he'd just run a long distance. The overpowering stench of mildew forced him to raise a hand to cover his nose. A tattered old curtain swayed lightly, even though the window was shut tight. He stepped closer, his voice low as if to calm himself. "It's nothing, just the wind." But the moment he pushed the curtain aside, he froze. The moonlight outside was blocked by a human figure, standing right against the glass. A pale face was pressed to the frame, its deep black eyes staring straight at him. He stumbled back, his voice trembling. Who's there?" The figure didn't answer, only tilted its head slowly, as if studying his reaction. Minh felt his heart pounding in his throat. Then, without warning, the shadow vanished, as if it had never been there. He dropped to the floor, trying to steady his breathing. Suddenly, his phone vibrated in his pocket. The screen lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Don't trust what the old woman told you. That thing is in the house with you." A cold weakness spread through his whole body. He glanced around, and every corner of the room seemed darker, deeper. From the far wall came the sound of slow, dragging footsteps, followed by a raspy voice right behind him. "You finally came." Minh spun around, but no one was there. Only the bedroom door, slowly swinging shut, as if someone had just gone inside. He swallowed hard and pushed the door open with trembling hands. The room was pitch black, but on the rotting wooden bed, there was a deep indentation, as if someone invisible was lying there. He called out, his voice breaking, "Who's there?" And from the darkness, an icy hand shot out, gripping his wrist tightly. Minh shivered when the faint sound of crying returned, this time right next to his ear. Forcing himself to stay calm, he turned to look around, but saw only the familiar interior of his own room, dimly lit by the yellow glow of an old tube light. He stepped quickly onto the porch, his voice shaking but trying to sound steady as he called out, "Who's out there? Why aren't you asleep yet?" The wind howled through the row of coconut palms, their leaves rustling in reply, but there wasn't a single shadow in sight. Moments later, the sound of clattering footsteps came from the back garden. Narrowing his eyes, Minh caught sight of a child in a white shirt slipping past, disappearing behind the beetle nut trees. He took a deep breath and followed quickly. His sandals thudded against the ground, but when he reached the other side, the garden was empty. A faint, weak voice came from behind a beetle nut tree. "Uncle, I'm so cold." Minh stepped closer and saw a small figure huddled there, messy hair covering most of its face. He bent down, reaching to touch its shoulder, when a freezing sensation shot down his arm. The child lifted its head, and its eyes were deep black voids, with no whites at all. Minh stumbled backward, his heart pounding. "No, it can't be," he muttered, but before he could finish, the child's figure vanished, leaving only a swampy, pungent smell, like mud from the bottom of a pond. Minh backed toward the house, but as he reached the doorway, that same voice whispered right beside his ear, "Uncle, help me." He spun around. This time it wasn't the child, it was a woman in a black bob-bob blouse, her waxy pale face just an arm's length away. Her smile stretched unnaturally, curling all the way to her ears. Minh froze, cold sweat breaking across his neck. Footsteps suddenly echoed inside the house, making him flinch. Turning back, he saw Mrs. Tu standing in the doorway, her gaze heavy. "Minh, you've seen it, haven't you?" He swallowed and nodded slightly. Mrs. Tu sighed. She was someone who died in the pond behind this garden. But the reason why isn't so simple. That night, Minh sat by the charcoal stove, listening to the faint crackle of burning wood, his mind still trapped in what he had just witnessed. Outside, the yard was wrapped in a thick curtain of fog, turning everything into a pale blur. Mrs. Hai poured a cup of hot tea, slid it toward Minh, and spoke slowly. She leaned toward the dark porch and said gently, "Minh, you're still young, not yet used to the things here. Don't dig too deep out of curiosity. In this land, not everything you see is something you should ask about." Minh held the cup, his hand trembling slightly. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his voice. "Mrs. Hai, I just want to know, this afternoon. That shadow, what was it?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes grew heavy with sadness as she looked toward the wall where an old photograph hung. When she finally spoke, her voice was slow, laced with meaning. "There are some people who die but refuse to leave." The wind whistled through the thatched roof, sounding like someone letting out a long sigh. Minh swallowed, a chill racing down his spine. He asked softly, "Mrs. Hai, I heard the children in the village say that a long time ago someone here was." Mrs. Hai raised her hand, cutting him off. "Don't listen to their nonsense. This is something only the elders know. But Minh, some things, if you learn them, you'll never sleep peacefully again." A heavy silence stretched between them, broken only by the chirping of insects. Minh's gaze drifted toward the dirt road, the same place where earlier he had seen a figure standing motionless in the field. He wanted to press her for more, but the seriousness in her eyes made him stop. Suddenly, from the yard came 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the door. Minh startled and looked at her. Mrs. Hai sat still, but her face tightened. She didn't get up to answer. Instead, she leaned close to Minh and whispered, as if afraid someone might hear, "Not at this hour." Minh swallowed hard, his heart pounding. The knocking came again, this time louder, more insistent. He shot up from his seat, but Mrs. Hai gripped his hand tightly, her fingers clamping down. "Don't open it. No matter who calls, don't open it." Outside, the knocking stopped, replaced by the crunch of footsteps on the sandy ground. Slowly circling the house, Minh shivered, sensing something was trying to find a way in. He wanted to ask, but Mrs. Hai raised a finger to her lips, signaling for silence. In that moment, Minh realized, through the gap in the door, an unblinking eye was staring in at him. Minh stepped onto the porch, settling into an old wooden chair that creaked under his weight. The moon had risen high, silver light spilling across the yard. He sat quietly, listening to the chorus of insects and the soft wind threading through the bamboo. Moments later, Mrs. Nam came out, carrying a steaming teapot. She set it down on the table, her tone thoughtful. "Minh, what Uncle Ba told you earlier. I bet it'll make it hard for you to sleep tonight." Minh nodded, his fingers tightening around his teacup. "I don't even know how much of it I should believe. But when I saw Uncle Ba's eyes while he was telling it, it was like he was truly afraid of something." Mrs. Nam looked out over the empty yard, her voice lowering. "Minh, there are many things here that can't be explained. People don't want to talk about them, but they also can't deny them." "Have you ever seen it yourself?" Minh asked, leaning forward. She sighed and poured more tea into his cup. "I have. Back when I was young, I was coming home late from harvesting rice. As I crossed the stone bridge, I saw a figure standing in the middle of it. But when I got closer, it vanished. All that was left was the sound of faint laughter drifting up from the river below." A shiver went down Minh's spine, his hands clenching tighter. "Then, what Uncle Ba said about the shadow by the river, it could be real." She nodded slightly. "I think so. But don't go digging too deep. Sometimes knowing more just brings trouble." Minh stayed quiet, torn between curiosity and unease. A sudden gust of wind slammed a nearby door shut, then flung it open again, the hinges groaning. Minh turned and caught a glimpse of a faint shadow gliding past the kitchen. He leapt to his feet, but when he entered, there was no one, only the lingering scent of incense smoke. Mrs. Nam called from outside. "Minh, what's wrong?" "Nothing, ma'am, I just heard the door." He answered quickly, but deep down, he knew he had just seen someone. The chill along his spine hadn't faded. He returned to his seat, his eyes still locked on the dark kitchen. Minh sat unmoving, his fingers absently tracing the rim of his now cold teacup. The wind from the garden drifted in, making the curtains sway gently. In the darkness, the bamboo groaned, sounding almost like whispered words. Mrs. Nam poured more tea, her voice carefully even. I think you must be tired. It's late. You should rest so you can get up early for the fields. Minh lifted the cup, taking a sip, but the bitter taste spread all the way to his throat. You go ahead and sleep. Ma'am, I want to sit out here a little longer. She studied him with a hint of concern. Don't dwell on those things too much. If you don't understand something, just let it pass. Minh only gave a faint smile and didn't reply. When she went inside, he exhaled and rose to his feet, walking slowly toward the kitchen. He couldn't explain why, but he needed to be sure he hadn't imagined it. Moonlight filtered through the small window, falling across the wooden table and the low stools. The incense smell still lingered, though he couldn't tell where it came from. He touched the chair beside him. It was ice cold, as if someone had just been sitting there. Is anyone here? He called softly. His voice echoed faintly off the four walls before fading away. No reply, only the steady drip of water somewhere, like a clock counting time. Turning to leave, his eyes caught something in the corner. On the dusty floor, right where the moonlight fell, was the faint imprint of a small footprint, the size of a child's. He crouched down, brushing it lightly with his fingers. The dust was dry, but the print was fresh and clear. From the bedroom, Mrs. Nam's voice called out, Minh, lock the door carefully, then go to bed. Yes, ma'am, he replied, but when he looked back, the footprint was already fading, as if the wind had swept it away. Minh sat huddled by the fire, listening to the faint crackle of burning wood. Outside, the night wind slipped through the cracks in the wall, making the roof tremble softly. Mr. Nam, the man who had offered him shelter since the afternoon, handed him a cup of hot tea and spoke in a slow, deep voice. Drink up, son. Nights here cut to the bone, especially when the northerly winds blow like this. Minh accepted the tea, replying quietly, Thank you, Uncle Nam. This afternoon, when I passed the field out there, I saw someone standing in the middle of it, but I swear there wasn't a soul nearby. Mr. Nam peered deep into Minh's eyes, as if searching to see if he was joking. Then he sighed. That place, the villagers call it the old burial mound. Decades ago, there was a terrible accident. So many died that no one dares to go near it at night. Minh hesitated before asking, What kind of accident? Mr. Nam braced himself with one hand and gazed toward the door, as though looking into the darkness. Years ago, a convoy of trucks carrying rice passed through. It was pouring rain, the road was slick, and a truck overturned, burying over a dozen people alive. They were buried right there on the mound. Since then, every night, people see white figures wandering about. A shiver ran through Minh. He set the teacup down. But the person I saw was standing still. Back to me, long hair, white clothes. When I blinked, they were gone. Mr. Nam nodded slowly. You're new here, not used to it yet. In this region, there are some places you shouldn't approach after the sun's gone. The two sat in silence. The steady chirping of crickets outside blended with the wind whistling through the bamboo. Minh heard faint footsteps above, as if someone was walking across the roof. He glanced at Mr. Nam, but the man remained still, eyes shadowed with sorrow. A moment later, Mr. Nam spoke again, his tone deliberate. If you're staying here a few days, don't go outside after the third watch. And, if someone calls your name, don't answer. Minh forced a nervous smile. You're making my skin crawl. Uncle. Mr. Nam didn't smile back, his voice dropped even lower. Around here, the living rarely call to each other at that hour, but something else does. Outside, the wind suddenly picked up, hurling dry leaves onto the porch. Minh instinctively pulled his blanket closer, feeling as if this night would be very long. Minh lay on the old bamboo cot, staring at the pitch-black ceiling. The wind whistled through the cracks in the wooden door, sounding like a long, drawn-out sigh. The old vendor at the market below the mountain had warned him repeatedly never to climb to the summit at night, for that was the hour when human and Guy, black magic, became one. But now, that very mountaintop was the only place where the curse clinging to him could be undone. Quam. his closest friend, stepped in carrying an oil lamp. He leaned in close, his voice dropping as though afraid someone might overhear. "Minh, I found this red cloth bundle in your backpack. Do you remember putting it there?" Minh flinched, cold sweat breaking out on his back. I've never seen it before." Kwong frowned, untying the bundle. Inside was a lock of black hair mixed with white powder. A sharp, acrid smell burst out, making them both choke. Outside, dogs barked frantically, then fell silent, as if their throats had been seized. Minh glanced toward the window and saw a hunched figure flash past. Long hair hanging down to the ground. Swallowing hard, his voice shook. "Kwong, I think something's following me." Before dawn, Minh and Kwong shouldered their packs, following the narrow trail up the mountain. The peak of Sun Mountain was buried in thick fog, ancient trees pressing so close together it felt like they were blocking the way. Kwong panted as he walked. "You're sure this is the right way?" "I'm sure, only Granny Mo at the summit can remove this." A sharp crack of breaking branches came from behind. Minh turned to see a gaunt figure standing in the mist. Eyes rolled white. It didn't move, only stared. Kwong tugged at Minh's arm, whispering, "Don't stop, keep going." At the top, a small hut came into view. Granny Mo sat in the doorway, her long silver hair draped over her shoulders, her eyes holding the weight of someone who had seen everything long before it happened. Her voice was hoarse. "Minh, you carry Yen's guy inside you. If it's not removed, you'll be dead before the third full moon." Minh took a deep breath. "Please help me, I've never harmed anyone." Granny Mo took a dagger, gesturing for Minh to sit, and began chanting in an unfamiliar tongue. The burning leaves filled the hut with eye-stinging smoke. A sudden gust of wind rattled the oil lamp. From the red cloth bundle, a swirl of black smoke rose, shaping into the face of Yen, the woman Minh had glimpsed once during a local festival. Her voice rasped, "You left me, then you'll never know peace for the rest of your life." Granny Mo clenched her jaw, driving the dagger down into the bundle. Metal struck something hard with a ringing clang. Yen's face twisted, her eyes flaring red, then crumbled into ash. Minh gasped, his whole body light as if a chain had been cut away. But when he stood, he noticed in the corner of the hut a faint shadow still standing there, its eyes no longer filled with hatred, only emptiness.